Happy New Year. I'm Adrienne DeLorco. I teach yoga for migraine and lead folks to less migraine symptoms, more freedom in my Beyond Migraine coaching program. So happy to join you in this new year for my first Wellness Wednesday of the year. Today we are talking about how the heck do I start yoga for migraine? We've had a lot of new members join and they want to get started, and I figured it's good to have that New Year's explanation of why yoga and how to get started. Lots of members in the group submitted really good questions, so I will be launching specifically into those. And this is going to be a bit of like a two-part series. So today I'm talking about yoga, and then next week we will do a sample yoga for migraine practice that incorporates many of the questions and requests people had for sequences that help with neck and shoulders, sun salutations that don't have inversions. So I look forward to practicing what we're talking about today next week. So I see lots of friends here. I'd love to see you in the comments. Take a time to write hello and where you're from. It's always nice to connect, and even if it's just a quick little comment, I appreciate it. So let's talk about first, I'll talk briefly about why yoga for migraine. Does it really help? What are the benefits? What do you need to look out for? And I've practiced yoga since I was a teenager, but when I developed migraine, I wasn't able to do the same types of athletic, sweaty, intense forms of yoga that I used to do before I developed migraine. And so that sent me on my own search to find yoga for migraine, because there's yoga for like every other disease practically. And funny enough, nothing very specific for migraine from teachers who had migraine that were really, understanding of what our needs are. And in that search, I was like, well, I need to do this and figure this out for myself. And here I am helping others as well. So if you are just joining me, we're talking about how the heck do you get started? So, great to see you, Katie and Debbie and Julie. And we just came off of our first group call with our Beyond Migraine clients, and some of them are here today. And it just was already such a heartwarming experience to connect with all of our clients who have been living with migraine and experience the same empathy and just openness of connecting to others with the same experience. So I find what's amazing about yoga. Yes, Ricardo, I've got my fancy migraine glasses. This pair is from TerraMed, and I really like these. They're not super dark, but they're pink and cute. So I find yoga to be an excellent gateway form of exercise for people living with migraine. Most people living with migraine, especially when they're in a chronic mode, are unable to do routine, regular exercise because you just feel like crap most of the time. You're tired, and it's hard to be consistent with exercise. What I love about yoga is that it can be more easily adjusted to your pain level that day. It's not like exercise and going to the gym where like you're just pushed to just max out on and just keep progressing and push your limits. With yoga, it's really the opposite, where you can be however you are, and the yoga meets you where you're at. So physically, you can make yoga as passive as you'd like. The practices that we include in yoga for migraine include yoga nidra, which is the most physically passive practice. It really is a guided meditation that you get to do laying down. So even makes meditation easy, right? You don't have to sit in some awkward position where your back hurts. Cross-legged, you lie down and you're guided to a beautiful place between wakefulness and sleep. And that is a foundation for my classes. We do yoga nidra at the end of every class, and my students and clients find that's one of their favorite practices. It's really helped people relax deeply and also have better sleep. And then the next level of intensity would be restorative yoga. That's where we use lots of props like bolsters and mats and blocks and blankets, which I'll pull out in a sec. And you just lay typically in very restful poses with the support of the block. So you're not using any effort. This is deeply relaxing and really restores the energy that can feel so depleted with migraine, can help us just be with whatever is and experience that stillness. And then you can expand from there into a gentle hatha style, which is kind of the overarching umbrella for different, most styles of yoga that you see in the West would come under that hatha yoga style. But what I love is that, again, you can adjust. You can do yoga in your bed. You can do yoga in a chair. I feel like I'm the green eggs and ham. You can do it everywhere. You can do it, when you're just standing in the kitchen. And it just is something that is physically accessible with the help of props that you can do if you're having a higher pain day. I will do a restorative practice. I'll do yoga nidra. But if I'm feeling good, I'll do a vinyasa style. I'll do like a more flowing, active, get my heart rate up. You get to choose, and that's what I think is so beautiful about yoga for people with migraine. It has that physical element, but really the root of it is you're also experiencing those benefits for stress relief, which we know most people with migraine experience stress as a trigger. So you're experiencing that stress reduction. You're also getting the benefits of exercise. Exercise is a powerful preventative for migraine, but for many of us, it's like, hey, I'm already not feeling well. How can I exercise, right? It's like this chicken or the egg thing. And I find yoga helps to bridge that gap where you're experiencing the same benefits for migraine as exercise, but you can make it as intense or less intense as you'd like. And then really that calming of the mind that yoga brings is what it's all about. I mean, we're using the body to really access the mind, to calm, to observe what's going on and be with whatever is. And that's mindfulness aspect is something that you don't always get with just a typical exercise class. And so it brings all of these together very powerfully for helping people transform their pain and feel more at ease, feel more emotionally secure. We know that migraine just can wreck your mental health, and so yoga has incredible benefits proven with research for depression and anxiety as well. There has been some research that has shown yoga to help with migraine. The most recent being from 2020. It was a study that was done in India with people with episodic migraine, and they showed that people who practiced yoga 3 hours a week reduced their frequency, intensity, and medication use by about 50%, which is equivalent to the best pharmaceutical preventatives. So that's a huge benefit, and you don't have negative side effects, right? You're only experiencing positive side effects. And so far what we're finding with my Beyond Migraine clients is that they're actually able to reduce their migraine frequency by 2/3. And many of them have chronic migraine. So all anecdotal so far, but the potential is very promising. So if you're interested in how to even, where do you go from here? Thank you, Debbie. I will drop the name of the vendor for these glasses, and I have a bunch, so I'm very lucky. And I know, Julie, I love my plants too, my little indoor forest back here. So one of the best ways to get started with what I do is my Yoga for Migraine First Aid Kit, which I will drop here in the comments. And this is my introductory program where you get 7 hours of on-demand yoga for migraine practices for a year, and you can choose, hey, I need help sleeping, here's a practice for that. Hey, I'm having a high pain day, here's a very mellow, calming, relaxing practice. And so you can choose for high pain day, low pain day, and sleep. You've got hour classes, you've got 15-minute classes. So if that's something you're interested in, that's a great introduction to my method. And if you're wanting to go deeper and really have someone hold your hand through this process, because it is hard to, develop a daily practice. And that is really one of the most beneficial things that you can do. It's better to have a daily yoga practice than a once a week practice that's longer. It is totally amazing if you can, manage to get to a yoga studio or even do online yoga, for an hour a week. Keep that up if you're doing that. But even if you did like 10, 15 minutes every day instead, you would actually get more benefit for a few reasons. You're developing that habit, and that is huge in making this, really work for you, is that you're creating that time in your day, every day, ideally the same time, where you have this sacred space for yourself to decompress, to check in with your body. And through those reps, you are training your brain and your body to be able to relax more, to not fear the migraine pain. And so that is great for a few reasons. One, you don't feel like you have to max yourself out by doing like an hour practice when you might not be there yet physically. That might be too intense or too long, and that can trigger more of an attack for you. They found that with exercise, it doesn't have to be done all in one swoop to be effective. That actually you can break exercise up in like 10-minute increments throughout your day and take breaks, and that is as effective. You get the same benefit as if you were to do an hour of exercise all in one swoop. So that's great for people with chronic pain. I highly recommend keeping it small, especially in the beginning, with 10 minutes. I also have a program that has 10-minute yoga for migraine practices. It's called my Yoga for Migraine sampler. I'll drop that in the comments. It's only $27, and it is in a really easy way. Sorry, trying to find my link. Easy way to get started and have those little breaks and throughout your day. That's so key for people living with migraine. And yeah, Ricardo talked about the Therapeutics, and I'm hoping you get started soon too, Ricardo, with your yoga. And that's great. Walking, I feel like, is the other best practice for exercise for people with migraine. It's so adjustable, it's low intensity. So let me check my notes and see if there's anything else I want to say before we go into the questions. Yeah, let's do it. Let's take the questions that people submitted, and if you have more, you can drop them in the comments as well. So we had a question from Lauren. How can I get into a routine of regular practice when I struggle with self-motivation, especially if I'm unwell? What could be a good short routine to take the place of a few sun salutations, asking for like a migraine-friendly few-minute practice? So really good place for us to start. In terms of the yoga practice itself, I will share the physical practice next week, but you also have in the comments some other practices that you can do, like the 10-minute sampler pack and the first aid kit, so you can have something at home as well. So that is really the key thing that so many people with migraine struggle with. You're not feeling great most of the time, you're tired, you might not be able to get out of bed, so how can you develop a regular practice. And because you're not feeling well so much of the time, right, your spoons are being used up and you feel like there's not even time for yoga because you're so behind on the laundry you didn't get to and the work that you missed, right? So it can feel overwhelming and kind of compound on itself. So my suggestion, Lauren, is what we do in Beyond Migraine is we start people off with very subtle yoga practices that are not even very physical at all. Like we start with practices that are helping to just deeply calm and restore your energy, because so many people come to us just totally depleted, not being able to sleep. And then we start to amp up the intensity. Each week is a little different. Then we move to restorative yoga. So we are getting into physical poses, but we're doing it with the support of blankets and bolsters. And then the next week after that, we have everybody schedule a time in their calendar that is their daily yoga practice time. Ideally the same time every day, because it's just easier to create that habit. And then we start with a 10-minute practice. And like you're just practicing making that space for your yoga practice. When we also teach people how to most effectively create new habits. There's so much great research now on habit forming, but the principle is to stack a habit on top of something that you're already naturally doing, whether that's you're opening up your laptop or you're getting tea, and every time that is that trigger for the next small habit. You want to make your habits so easy that you can do it on your worst migraine day. So think about that. Even in bed, you can do yoga nidra practice. It's just listening to guided meditation. You can actually do, probably many people are able to do some gentle yoga in their bed, whether that's, hugging their knees to their chest or coming into a slight twist. So what I love about yoga is you can really adjust, and even when you're not feeling well, and it helps you feel better. Really, it does. It helps so many people bring their pain level down while and after they practice yoga. And it helps you just feel calmer, feel emotionally like not as overwhelmed by what you're experiencing. And then another hack that has helped some of my Beyond Migraine clients is that we have like a backup time. So if maybe your schedule is like you have planned to do yoga at 9 a.m. every day, but you wake up with a migraine attack and like your medicine hasn't kicked in yet and you just can't muster it, or something else happens with your kids, having a backup time has really helped people. Like, so maybe then at 2 o'clock you still have a space. Maybe by that time you're feeling better, your kids aren't home yet, and you have like a plan B. Because when you only have a plan A, migraine is so unpredictable that often if we can't fulfill the plan A just as we had planned, then like we just give up. And so you want to make it easy to start, make it short, and have a backup time, if you need it, and make it very adjustable, that that you don't have to push yourself if you're not feeling well. So let's check in here. If you have a migraine, can you do yoga? Barbara asks, or wait for the migraine to dissipate? Great question. Let's go into that now. I would say it depends on a few things. What type of yoga you're going to do. If you're already let's talk about the stages of migraine, right? So prodrome, that's kind of what we call like you're starting to feel migraine-y. Like maybe you have a little head pain, you're tired. It's different for everybody, but you can start to sense you're not 100%. That time is actually a great time. That's the most effective time to do a mindfulness practice. There's actually been research on that that's like the best time to be able to reverse a migraine attack that might be in progress. Many of my clients have experienced that. I have as well. And it's miraculous when it happens, right? Like when you don't have to take a trip down because you did yoga, and it sounds amazing, but it does happen to many of my clients. So if that's the case, I still would opt for a lower intensity style of yoga, like a restorative yoga or yoga nidra. And maybe there's some certain stretches some of my clients enjoy, like when they feel an attack coming on, like Elena, if you're out there, she loves doing these exercises with a yoga strap. I call it shoulder flossing, where you're kind of moving the strap around you and gets into the nooks and crannies of your neck and shoulders. So in that case, I think you can safely do a very gentle style of yoga, and many folks experience a less intensity, and or the migraine attack does go away. If you are having a higher pain day, or if it's like you just wake up and it's super intense, I probably would opt myself for like yoga nidra, where I'm lying down. I'm just listening to a meditation. It helps me just accept what is. And as you feel better, you might add some more physical poses. But what I think really it comes down to is that when you're in a high pain zone, you don't want to do anything physically intense, like a vinyasa style flow. That maybe you're going up and down and you're getting hot and you're sweaty. Like generally, for most people, I would say that might be triggering. We're all different. Some people enjoy that, and I do too when I'm having a low pain day. I'm having a high pain day, I go very, very gentle with restorative yoga and yoga nidra. So let's check in here, and Ricardo says his migraine pain is doing better. I'm really unsure, despite walking in light weights, how yoga movements are going to affect vestibular symptoms and neck issues. Really good question. So I have worked with a few vestibular students throughout my teaching of yoga. Vestibular is where migraine is where people tend to have more dizziness or lightheadedness, not always with head pain. And what often is a trigger for people with vestibular migraine is the change of position of their head. So for some folks with more intense vestibular, lying down flat can be difficult. For others, just bending forward. And that actually will bring me to my next point that people asked about. Like Katie, who I know you're here, she asked, how can I do yoga poses without having my head below my heart? That triggers migraines for me. And similarly, Cecily asked, are there adjustments for inversions? She wants to make sure she's not doing any poses that are gonna exacerbate or trigger an attack. So these are all kind of similar, because the big topic here is yoga inversions. So what is a yoga inversion? It is a pose where your head is lower than your heart, and it can look like many different things, and I'm going to briefly share. So probably the most common one that you'll see in a yoga class is down dog, right? My head is lower than my heart, a forward fold. But you can also have them where your legs are up and your head is down. So inversions are quite a common type of pose in yoga, and they have many health benefits. But for people with migraine, it is a very common trigger. I did a survey of people with migraine and their yoga habits and struggles, and inversions were one of the top triggers for people with migraine, but not for everybody. So it's not like universal. Like I don't have, inversions are not a trigger for me. And they might depend. If you're having a higher pain day, they might not feel as comfortable, but if you're having a low pain day, like inversions might be fine. So if you notice that you don't feel as well, or if it triggers an attack, you're not alone. And if you have vestibular migraine, it is also very common that that process of coming down and up can make you dizzy and not feel good as well. So what can you do about it? One is that in our yoga for migraine practices and my classes, we rarely do inversions, and if I do include one, I will give options, and they're very mellow. So like we don't do down dog, because I know that it is a trigger for so many people. And so you know that if you practice, from one of my classes, you're not going to need to deal with that. But if you go to another person's yoga class or do yoga online with someone else, what you can do to adjust those inversions is you can use props. So I'll grab my bolster. So if you're here and you can, let's say your teacher tells you to do a forward fold, right, where you're going to come here, but that's too much for you. So you can get blocks, you can use your bolster, and maybe you go halfway. Maybe you stay up here. And if you were to come down, you're keeping your head up and you're reducing that angle of your head being lower than your heart. So next week we will go more into some of those things that you can do instead of inversions, because there are, and props really are going to be your friend in that department. And then in terms of anything else with vestibular, I recommend going slowly, that you're moving very mindfully in between poses. If you do have your head down, even in like a cat-cow, which you can do in your seat, if your head is down, you're going to just slowly bring it up again, and maybe take a moment in between to let your head recalibrate. It is good for people with vestibular to move their head and their eyes, and that's part of vestibular therapy. So you don't want to avoid all movement, but you want to do it in a mindful way, where you can help your head just kind of recalibrate in a slow way. And then even, if you were to do poses where you're lying down for vestibular people, prop your head up with some blankets so you always have a pillow so you're not totally flat, and that can be a really easy hack as well. All right. Let's move on to Juliet's question. She says, my neck has always been a trigger for me, so how can I gently do the neck and shoulder work without going too far? Yeah, so neck and shoulders are ubiquitous places of tension for most people with migraine, and that's one reason I focus pretty much every class on poses for your neck and shoulders. But two, another reason that yoga can be so helpful for people with migraine, because that neck and shoulder tension is there for so many of us, and no other like pharmaceutical necessarily is going to help you in that department. So yoga is kind of killing two birds with one stone there, right? Helping with the neck tension and helping with the migraine. So what I wanted to say about how to know how far to go in a pose. Pamela asked something kind of similar. She'd love to know how and when to safely push herself. I find I'm doing a lot of breathing, meditation, relaxing practices, but would love to build back some more strength. So for both questions, like how to decrease that neck tension, and I had a lot of other questions about that, like what are the poses to do. So tune in next week because we will practice all that physically. Today I'm just talking. But how to know how far to go in a pose, and how to know like when to push yourself a little bit more and get more of an active physical workout from yoga. Two things. The first one is you start small and repetition and doing it more often for a short amount of time is more effective than doing 30 minutes of neck stretches once a week. So I recommend for many people who have a desk job to set their timer on their phone, and then every hour take 1 or 2 minutes to do some neck and shoulder exercises. You don't even have to get out of your chair. It can simply be bringing one ear to the shoulder and changing, rolling the shoulders back. Those are simple, they don't take long, they're kind of nothing fancy, but the more that you can do those little things, it's like, I imagine it's like releasing pressure on a pressure cooker, right? So we don't want the tension and the pressure to build and build and build until you get a migraine attack. We're releasing tension throughout your day, taking those little breaks. That is huge for decreasing your pain. And then as you're doing it more, short, little reps, a few times a day, then you're going to be able to, maybe eventually do more poses and stay longer in poses, do poses that are a little perhaps more intense. But let's say you're in a pose, any asana is called a yoga pose, where you're kind of like, oh, is this too much? Like, can I push myself? Do I need to pull back? For many folks with migraine, especially who are just starting out in yoga, my advice is to give the physical part of yoga like your 60% effort, not push yourself all the way. We're so used to pushing ourselves and pushing through, and it's a habit that we actually want to reverse. We want to be able to give it some effort, but not push so far that then we get a migraine attack the next day because we went too far. So 60% effort, if you're doing a twist, maybe you don't go your max in the twist, you go halfway there. As you're more regular with your yoga practice and you're like, okay, I think I can handle more. Here are 3 questions that you can ask yourself in any pose about how much to challenge yourself. So if you're in a pose that maybe is a little challenging, or you're a little worried about, is this going to give me a migraine attack, or is this just like too hard? The first question you ask yourself is this safe? Does this feel safe for my mind, my body, my spirit? And if the answer is no, that internal voice will tell you to come out and pick something else. The practice of yoga is all about discernment. So asking yourself these questions is really instrumental also in helping you be more discerning about what is giving you pain and where you need to pull back and maybe push forward. Just because we have pain doesn't mean we can't ever push ourselves. And really, you do want to progress to a place where you can challenge yourself and take some risks and not always restrict your movement, because when you get stuck in just always restricting yourself, you actually in many ways become more sensitive and have less mobility and have more problems if you're always restricting. So it's that finding that delicate balance between on that edge in yoga they call like finding your edge and knowing that you can go forward, you can pull back from your edge and play with it. So that question number 1 again, is this safe? If you're like, yeah, this is safe, I'm not going to go to the doctor. The next question to ask yourself, will I be okay later? If sometimes you might notice, I'm like, for me particularly, if I do physically intense things like I'm sweating a lot, I'm, getting hot, those can be a trigger for me if it's new, if I'm not used to it, if I'm not in the habit of it. So for me, I might be like, my legs are burning, I'm really like panting here. I don't think I will be okay tomorrow. I think this might be a trigger. Then you can pull back. But if you're like, no, I think I can stick with this. The last question you can ask yourself when you're in a pose that's challenging is, will I be able to release this pose as carefully and as mindfully as I entered the pose? Usually we go into a pose and, the teacher walks us through it and we're like, yeah, I got this. But then you're like holding it a while and by the end you're just like want to, rush out of it. And if that's the case, you might have held too long. You want to be able to have the energy to release the pose mindfully and with the same energy that you entered it. And when you're in a pose that maybe is a little challenging, it's all about observation. It's all about noticing what your breath is doing. If you're able to maintain a calm breath through a pose, you're on the right track. But if your breath gets short, faster, that's a good indication that you need to pull back and lower the intensity. You also want to check in with your body tension. If you're in a pose and you notice other parts of your body tensing, that's a good indication to pull back. You want to be able to even in a challenging pose, you have, some work, but there's not this like building tension throughout the whole body. And then finally, you're monitoring your pain sensations in that Pose. And this could be for anything, if you have low back pain or your neck and shoulders have tension, if you're noticing that, you're breathing okay, you feel safe, like rest of your body's not tense, but I feel like in a tense sensation in this stretch, and you might want to stay there, right? You might want to challenge yourself a little bit. But if you notice that you're doing this, your breath is like getting shallow, you're getting kind of nervous, you're tense, your pain is like starting to like have these flashes of intensity, that's a good indication to ease out. We all have pain every day, physical pain, migraine, emotional pain. And in yoga, it's a great place to be with whatever it is and be able to kind of play with what that means to have pain in our body, not to be scared of it, because we all have it, and know that we can challenge, we can pull back. We're not these like fragile, little delicate daisies. Even though we have migraine, we can feel like that everything is a trigger for us. And the practice of yoga is the safe place where you can observe yourself in a safe way, and start to learn how to calm, but also take some risks and challenge and play with the limits of what you thought your body could do. So I know I've talked for a long time today, and I will get next week we will incorporate Alicia's questions on breath, Mahela's questions on and Linda's questions on neck, and I think even Lauren had asked about some alternatives to sun salutation. So we will bring that all in for next week's free class. I'm gonna check in here. So Julie, no worries. I'm glad you could join us for any amount today. And I will also post in the chat here the link for Beyond Migraine, because many people feel like, this is great and they might be able to do some yoga on their own, but they're not finding like that much traction with their practice. It's hard for them to get regular with it. And if you're at the point where you just want somebody to guide you, to hold your hand through this process in a community of other people who also have migraine and understand what it's like, and to really do all the things like you feel like you should do, like your yoga and your meditation and going to bed on time and eating regularly, but actually do it and stick with it, because you have this accountability, you have this step-by-step program. Reach out to me, and oh yes, I will get the name of the classes. Thanks for the reminder. Reach out to me and let's talk. It's a very personal program, and so I like to interview people about their experience and see if it's a good fit. And we have an amazing group of clients who just started with us after this new year. So we would love to have you as well. Our last cohort of clients learn how to decrease their migraine days by 50 to 67%. Even I was amazed at the results. So it is totally doable. It's totally available for you to really transform not only your migraine pain, but just the way you see yourself, the way you treat yourself, and feel more free again. So I'm also gonna, before I leave, get the name of my current glasses that I'm wearing from TerraMed, and they, just since I'm on Zoom a lot, I just find having some eyewear is helpful. So let me get that for you guys. But I've got also a pair of TheraSpecs. I've got a pair of Axon Optics. I finally found them. They were lost for like most of the year. They're my sunglasses, and I found them finally on some hidden shelf. Okay, and here are my this current pair of migraine glasses that I'm wearing. All right. Thank you all for being here for this long talk today. And we will see you next week for an actual practice. Be well, everybody. Bye-bye.